Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Piazza, principal of Carmel High School, and I'm happy to be here tonight to present Margaret Dunlap from Challenge Success in Stanford University, who's going to be speaking to our community about the well-balanced student. This school year, we have partnered with Challenge Success in Stanford University to survey our students. We had over 1,000 responses from our students in a survey in November, and the purpose of the survey was to get feedback for students on their school experience with the focus on helping improve their sense of belonging, well-being, and engagement in school. So we'd like to thank Ms. Dunlap for being here tonight, and I would like to now turn it over to Margaret Dunlap. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Welcome, everyone. Hello to all the families, parents, caregivers, students, educators, if you're tuning in. I'm here to share the topic of the well-balanced student. So this evening's kind of in two parts. As your principal mentioned, the students were surveyed earlier this year to really lift up particular themes of engagement, belonging, etc. So I'll be covering some of those research topics and sharing with you the survey results. And then part two is really to consider some protective factors. What are practices, strategies that you can implement in your home this evening to really improve the lives of your students? So let's get started. Again, I'm Margaret Dunlap. I've been with Challenge Success for 15 years, formerly an educator, now the mother of 3 children who are basically grown up and living on their own. But I just always want to underscore values. It's so important in a whole school community to really identify individual values as well as school-wide values. And mine are family, integrity, and then lastly, connection. So let's get connected tonight. So our mission at Challenge Success is we partner with schools to elevate student voice. That is the cornerstone of our work. In fact, here at Carmel, there are students on the team thinking about ways to improve the student experience, implement research-based strategies, equity-centered, that improve, again, well-being, engagement, and belonging. So we'll be covering some of those topics this evening. Now, our approach, we work, again, putting students at the center. We co-design with all community members, super important, and then finally, again, those implementing research-based strategies. So I want to kick off this talk, and I want you to think to yourself as you're watching this at home, how do you define success? What are the characteristics of a successful person? So just think for a moment, think about 1 or 2 of those characteristics, and I want you maybe to think of your oldest kiddo 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line. What does success look like? So you're coming up with those characteristics. I want to share with you what we typically hear from parents. We want them to be passionate about what they do, a love for learning, stable, right? That they're independent, not maybe living in your basement when they're 25. And then finally, contributing to their community. And there are many others we hear about. We want them to be happy. We want them to be healthy. We want them to have this sense of well-being and connection. Now, there is a little bit of a disconnect because this is what we typically hear from parents. And I want you to think about what we might hear from students when we pose this very same question. We hear things like high grades equals success, getting into a prestigious college, getting a high-paying job. Those are really the top 3 we hear from students when we pose this question. So, what we value the most, well-being, supportive relationships, joy and purpose, and what students say our society is valuing, which is, again, high grades, prestigious colleges, high income. So, recognizing this disconnect, after all, these are the very same students from the very same parents. Why is that so? So, I'm going to back up a little bit to our origin story. We've been around for about 20 years. We were launched with Dr. Denise Pope from Stanford University. She wrote her doctoral dissertation. And in order to do so, she shadowed 5 high-achieving students from a public high school, high-achieving like Carmel, for a year. So she had a backpack, she had a locker, she went to all of their classes. And she was really looking at engagement. What's going on in these schools? One student, his name was Kevin. Now, Kevin carried a backpack and a calculator with him at all times to kind of keep track of his weighted and unweighted GPA. Kevin's goal was to get into UC Berkeley, right? His dad was an educated engineer, and he wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps. And Denise heard this quote she'll never forget. He was in class one day raising his hand, and she said, "Gosh, you were really in fire. You seem really interested." And he said this quote, "People don't go to school to learn. They go to get good grades, which brings them to college, which brings them the high-paying job, which brings them to happiness, or so they think." Really, it's about, getting the homework in by hook or by crook, playing the game of school. So ultimately, she wrote a book called Doing School, and each of those 5 students wrote his or her own chapters. It was published and was picked up by the Vaden Health Center, which is the mental health center at Stanford University. And they said, hey, we are getting the aftermath of these very same kids. At our university, at universities across the country, we need an intervention. So there was a call to action with several psychologists and educators really starting to think about how can we support and do some interventions in the middle and high school to kind of stop this doing school mentality. So that's where we were born. We were first called SOS for stressed out students and later changed our name to Challenge Success, really challenging that very narrow notion of success. So I want to provide kind of a visual, a metaphor here of what this looks like for many of the students across the country. So it's a straight line, right? You can see this pot of gold at the end, which is really this happiness, whatever that looks like for a kid. And in order to get there, there's this kind of tightrope walk, right, where you don't want to trip at any given moment. So it starts in middle school with some pressure to get those grades. You get into high school, the pressure seems higher. You're thinking about college admissions along the line, and then you hit your senior year. And I know many of our seniors are hearing back from colleges at this time. And perhaps you don't get into your dream school, okay? You are rejected. So this whole idea of happiness, pot of gold, whatever that success line looks like, fades away. We at Challenge Success want to offer a different kind of look here, that success looks much more like this. It is circuitous, there are dead ends, there are stops and starts. When I talk to audiences around the country and I ask, parents, how many of you took a straight line versus a squiggly line? Most of them raise their hands. So, and again, it's your own definition of success, what this looks like. So again, are you an A, that straight line, or a B? And, many folks, at least 80% or more, indicate B. By the way, there is no wrong answer. There are plenty of straight line folks out there. And I tried here, but there are several different paths that this may look like. And if you look at this graph, I bet you can kind of identify with one of these 6 options. So our definition of success for kids, for thriving student, is that well-being, engagement, and belonging are incorporated into the entire school day and year. So we know from our research that WEB, as we call it, are intrinsically linked and are critical components of student success. So I mentioned at the top of this that students here at Carmel took a survey, the Stanford Survey of Adolescent School Experiences. And here are some of the buckets: academic engagement, physical and mental health, homework load. How much homework are your kids doing here? We'll share that. Academic worry, beliefs about teacher care and support. This notion of an adult to go to is foundational to building a climate of care. And then finally, stress and ways to alleviate it. I first want to share what students are reporting here at Carmel, specifically around stress levels, okay? This is true for many of the schools we work with, that grades, tests, quizzes, all of that is a top stressor at over, around 60% here, followed by future plans, which has to deal with also, where am I going to go to college? What's my plan look like for my future? There's some definite worry there. Overall workload, again, around 50%. Lack of sleep. We start early here at Carmel High School, and really many of the kids are experiencing sleep deprivation, and I'll move more into those numbers in a moment. There are some issues around time management, procrastination. Some are, stressed out about a specific class or classes, lack of time to play, relax, or be with family. They're just so busy, right? The bell rings at 7:09, and they sometimes don't get home far into the evening where they have homework, etc. And then mental health issues. So that is, again, for Carmel High School, those top stressors students indicated. Let's jump into homework. How much homework is your child or students, if you're viewing, how much homework are you doing on a nightly basis? This is Monday through Friday on average, or Monday through Thursday. Our overall aggregate in high schools across the country, looking at high achieving schools like Carmel, it's 2.7. You guys have a nice number here. It's about 1.9 hours per night, so almost 2 hours per night. There is almost 15% doing more than 2.5 hours a night. Again, that may be related to the number of advanced placement courses students are taking, honors courses, et cetera. That's bumping up that overall number. And unfortunately, as an educator and as a mom, right, that students over 50% believe that their homework is busy work. And this is not necessarily that teachers are assigning busy work. It's that students don't understand the why. How is this going to make me do better on the test? How is this going to improve my learning, my skills? So really articulating what is the purpose of homework each and every day when teachers are handing out homework is an important next step. So we talked about homework, and I'm going to share with you a little bit by grade level. So 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. This is not surprising. It steps up in the 12th grade with 2.2 hours per night on average. We often see 11th grade really high. So this is a different scale for me to view. And again, we typically see that 9th grade a little bit lower than all of the rest. But you can kind of see that steady march up to 12th grade. This is interesting. So we ask kids, your perception of homework, too much, too little, or just right. Take a look at this. We've got about a third, a little over a third was saying it's just too much homework. But over half saying it's just right? We're kind of in the sweet spot for the homework load. So many are feeling comfortable. And, there's always a few saying too little. So I just want to share with you that perception of homework and to be really cognizant as a student, as a parent, caregiver, when you are signing up for course selection, to be really mindful of how much, in terms of homework load, et cetera, you can handle any given student given the course load. And your extracurriculars, your sports, performing arts, paid job. We know many have paid work. Let's move into extracurriculars. Extracurriculars are great. It's clear in the research, getting involved with one or more extracurriculars, you're often moving your bodies, you're learning something new, you're getting to know a new friend. So we're big advocates of extracurriculars. Again, the question is, how much is too much? So 92% in the community are involved in at least one extracurricular. You can see the time breakdown here, about 2.5 hours or 5.6 hours on a weekday total, right? So that's like a typical basketball practice, et cetera. And then 2.5 hours per weekend. So we know that this is a pretty sporty community. We've got lots of kids involved in club sports, school sports, et cetera. So let's look at the breakdown there of what kids are doing here at Carmel High School. So school sports at almost 50%. We've got club sports, probably taking up some of that weekend time in terms of extracurricular. Community service, this is beautiful to see a third of the community is involved in some sort of community service. School clubs, performing arts, visual arts, right? So music, painting, drawing, orchestra, band, et cetera. Why are they doing the extracurriculars? This is always really an interesting data point to look at. Good news is that a third are stating, you know what, I'm doing this because it's fun. I want to have fun. I'm probably meeting some new friends and learning something and really enjoying my time with someone who's a mentor who is not really evaluative. So we love that. Not surprising here, about a quarter indicating, you know what, I'm really involved in these extracurriculars for college admissions. This idea of resume building, kind of getting ready to apply for schools their senior year, to learn and build new skills. And about 5% my parent caregiver requires. This is something that they want me to do. Now, often for little kids, right, who are like in 3rd grade, 2nd grade, or whatnot, we want to make sure that that kid is grabbing their soccer cleats, that they're the ones running to the car to go to practice. So really having important conversations around extracurriculars and why your student is signed up for them and if they want to continue. So this is a stress issue when it comes to extracurriculars. We ask them, how often are you stressed? And you can see here, always, about 20%. Often a third of the kids, sometimes a third. and rarely 18%. Just to give you a sense, there is some correlation at times with extracurriculars and stress load. And finally, I mentioned paid work, and we do have several students in the community who are involved in both their school day, their homework load, extracurriculars, and even paid work on top of that. So we've got about 60% no paid work, and this is kind of separated by hours. So half an hour, about 2%. You can kind of see through 2 hours, about 6%, 5 hours, 10%, and then we've got 8 to 10 hours, that's a little bit over 20% of the students here. So really thinking about, is your kid trying to do more than the adults in their lives? These kids who are busy going from, often waking up at 6, 5:30 in the morning and not going to bed till late at night. Next thing I want you to think about is sleep. How much sleep does your teenager need? And I want you to come up with a number. Think about that number. We know in the research that our middle school kids, just in case you have a middle schooler, need at least 10 hours a night is a recommended number from the Stanford Sleep Center. They say at the high school level, it's 9.25 is that perfect number. So the National Sleep Foundation says anywhere between 8 and 10. But again, we're following the Stanford Sleep Study here. And in our middle school, kind of overall aggregate data, it's about 7.8 that our kids are getting in middle school. And in high school, 6.7. It's shocking when you see the 6, right? But not surprising. Now for Carmel, I'm going to share those sleep numbers. 6.3. This is a little alarm bell going off, which may beckon somewhat of a schedule rethink and redesign, but that's simply not enough sleep for anybody, for adults or students alike. There are some severe consequences to sleep deprivation, and I want you to think in your mind how you feel when you have a lousy night's sleep and how you're functioning, your cognitive load, your memory, your ability to get along with others, lots of different ramifications. The number one is depression and anxiety. So we know in the research there is a bilateral relationship between sleep deprivation, depression, and anxiety. And what that means is if you are depressed or anxious, you may have a harder time falling asleep. If you have depression or if you're sleep deprived, that can actually trigger depression, trigger anxiety. So that's kind of the number one piece to look at when you're sensing some mental health challenges with your child, to really check in around the amount of sleep they're getting consistently through the week. Binge sleeping does not help on the weekend, and even 30 minutes more every night makes a difference. We know there are issues with learning, with short-term and long-term memory. Turns out when you're sleeping, you are consolidating those short-term memories into long-term memories, and you are filtering out unwanted information and making new creative associations. We see bullying on the rise, sports injuries with lack of sleep, and there are more drowsy drivers on the road than drunk drivers. So really thinking about the start time for schools and thinking about switching that, we see statistically those car accidents go down in the community when there's a later start. So unfortunately, only 3% of the students are getting the amount of sleep they need in the community, and part of the reason is that 79% keep their phones or screens in the bedroom. So I want to share with you this slide. 79% their phones are in the bedroom, 18% thankfully have them in another room, and then we've got a small 2% have no phone. So we know in the research it is important to separate all screens from the bedroom. Their devices are the most addictive devices attuned to going to Las Vegas, right? You want to make sure that the phones are put away, that they're docked in a central area. In my home, with my kids in high school, all phones were docked at 9:30. I was the worst mom in the world, okay? It was a continual struggle, but it's that important to dock those phones. They will feel as though they're missing all the social time with their friends. It will be there the next day. So it turns out screens also delay the release of melatonin, make it harder to fall asleep. So thinking about where the screens live and making sure they are out of the bedroom. This may be a lot to digest, but I'll just share with you, this is kind of how many hours of sleep students get on a typical night. Someone's reporting 4 hours, I'm not sure about that, all the way to 9, that's good news, but you can kind of see in the middle ground there's that 6 or 6.5 hours. And in the red zone, not okay, too little sleep. Have I said enough about sleep? Okay. So with the homework, the extracurriculars, the sleep is being compromised. We also know kids are not making decisions they're proud of, right? Think about Kevin, the one who I quoted earlier about doing school. For him, it was cheat or be cheated. It was way worse to come home with a poor grade than to disappoint his dad. So we know here at Carmel, and this is not, this is all over the country, where you got about 78% reported cheating in the past month. And here are the top 3 ways that they're doing it. Working together when asked for individual work, right? They're like little allies. You do this part of the homework, I'll do this part of the homework, right? Part of the problem is they perceive it as busy work, so it doesn't matter who does it. And then we've got copying someone else's homework and then using AI. I want to move in, and I know this is a lot of data, hang in there, but let's move into parent expectations. This is really important. We ask students about their parent expectations. We ask them on lots of different levels, and I want to share the next few slides with that specific data. So if you look at the green here, so this is never in the red, rarely. So never can they meet their parents' expectation. Never is about 5%, rarely 8%, sometimes about a third, 29%. And then we've got often at 45%, and then always at 14%. So just to be thinking about, they're working hard, they want to please you, they want to do well, and just checking in with them unconditionally. I love you even though you got a bad grade, right? So just making sure you're checking in with your kids about that. And we ask them, and these are agree or strongly agree, these particular statements. And I'm going to read through them one by one. My parent guardians expect excellence in school from me. Sure, you do. You want them to do well. You're at a rigorous school. You want them to move on to perhaps post-secondary pathway. You want what's best for them. My parents want me to be the best at everything, almost 50%. We know there's pressure on the field. There's pressure in academics, right? But there is this expectation and this perception from students that you want them to be the best at everything. That's really a high, tall order for any kid. My parent guardians set very high academic standards for me, about 54%. My parent guardians have high expectations for my future, or higher than I have, about 40%. Only outstanding performance in extracurricular, co-curricular, outside of school activities is good enough in my family. So just again, a conversation with your student about many of these topics. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about the academic and health tolls. So we do see widespread disengagement around the country, right? Kids are just so overloaded. They're taxed with too many things to do in a given day. They're not getting the sleep they need. And we see this wide cheating as well. Not prepared with 21st century skills. What does that mean? Like, these are the soft skills: collaboration, critical thinking, right? Things that they need when they get onto college. So really focused on more problem solving skills in the classrooms. We see elevated rates of anxiety and depression, unfortunately, related to sleep deprivation, some of it. Substance abuse, and this is not your typical, I'm going to try marijuana or alcohol. These are really high level drugs being sold at schools across the country, in particular high schools, of Ritalin, of Adderall, with the perception, and those are prescriptions for kids who are diagnosed with ADHD or ADD. There is a perception that if I take it, it will make me be able to study more, I can stay up, without understanding the severe health risks associated with those. And back on the substance abuse, these kids, they're using it as a coping skill, a negative coping skill. And then other debilitating disorders that we see out there. Suicide ideation, cutting, self-harm. So this is the last depressing slide, I promise. And I want to move into a question I posed to all of you, which is it possible to have balance in today's high-pressured culture? And if you're here in the audience with me, I would ask you to show me your hands, thumbs up, sideways thumbs, I'm not sure, thumbs down, no way. Now, typically, I have very optimistic audiences, right, that believe, but it's tough, right? And so we use this kind of, you can see someone surfing here. I don't think I could stay up on a surfboard myself, but it is very difficult to do, right? And you may have it for maybe a day or a week, and then something goes wrong, and then you're back to trying to find the balance, particularly if you have a household of double working parents, as in my household, and trying to arrange for all of the various activities for your kids. But at Challenge Success, we know it can be done. We've worked with many schools to see real change to promote that well-being, engagement, and belonging. But this is where you come in, right? The school is going to be working on a set of initiatives to really work on the school end of things. But when it comes to the home, there are some structural things to really consider. So I want us to take a step back and consider one of your kids. Maybe pick your busiest kid or your oldest kid. And we have this time wheel here, and this will be hopefully an attachment with a recording where you can kind of fill it out and maybe print one and have your student fill it out to really consider how their day is spent. And we didn't make this up. Many of the things are missing, like grooming and transportation, commuting, etc. But you get the gist. You have school, which you do not have control of those hours. There is homework load, which to some extent you say, gosh, I don't have control of the amount of homework assignments coming home, but you do when it comes to course selection and really thinking thoughtfully about the load of advanced placement courses, extracurriculars, paid work, chores. Now, when we think about chores, and I just want to have you think, are your kids doing chores? Most of the time I have very honest audiences, and when I ask them how many of your kids are not doing chores, at least 80% of the hands go up. Chores are important, and in fact lead to more academic achievement and higher success. So this is walking the dog, emptying the dishwasher, setting the table, helping you make a meal. They are not paid with an allowance. This is their first opportunity to be in a unit where they are contributing. There's some interesting research out from Whirlpool, in fact, that illustrates this. So make your kids do chores. You are going to hear pushback, as I did in my family, every night. Mom, I have a bio test. How long does it take to empty a pretty full dishwasher? Maybe 7 to 8 minutes, right? So in my home, I used to grant my daughter Caroline 10 extra minutes before she had to go to bed. So really incorporating those chores. Media, and we define media as anything with an on and off button and a screen, right? So smartphone, television, right? Your gaming, Xbox, etc. I mentioned no screens in the bedroom, and making sure that it is a wild, wild west, and really getting curious about what your kids are viewing online. What kind of games are they playing? What kind of communities are they interacting with? So really get curious. For some kids, media is an outlet, right? Where they are their introverted selves, and they can kind of reinvent themselves and put on new identities. So really trying to get a handle on media and screens out of the bedroom. Unstructured time, and believe it or not, when I was in Los Angeles 2 years ago, I had a parent raise their hand and ask me, what is unstructured time? Okay, this is time when your kid is not doing anything. They may be plopped at home after a busy day of school, listening to music. Maybe they're flipping through a magazine, right? This is time when no one's telling them what to do or where to go, where they do not have an obligation. And our kids simply do not have enough unstructured time. What we like to see in terms of structured time is as much unstructured time as they have structured time. So if your kid is in a 2-hour football practice and they also have a paid job, can they fit it in and also have that 2.5 hours or so of unstructured time? Family time, and then sleep. So if you take a moment and fill that out and put out how many minutes are attributed or hours to each of those sections, the question is your kid trying to do more than a 24-hour day? So I took out school and homework. All the rest you fill in. So please, be thinking about that, and then really think about where are the areas I need to boost and where can I steal time away from to get to what we call the protective factors. We call it PDF, and it doesn't stand for what is that? Portable document format feeder or whatnot. It stands for playtime, downtime, and family time. These are the protective factors that lead to higher academic achievement, lower risk in terms of kids ending up in jail, to be honest, in the research, and higher success. And this is what we want to focus on right now. So remember when your kid wanted to play with a box instead of the present it came in? They were little, and playtime looks a lot different for our adolescent kids. But I want to run through playtime, downtime, which includes sleep, and family time. Nurture playtime. Whenever you can, to get your kids unplugged and get them outside and moving. It's shooting hoops in the backyard. It's meeting with friends. It's unplugged as much as possible and getting them to play. Student chosen driven endeavors. When the kids are little, this is like genius time, right? The gentleman, David Elkin, wrote The Hurried Child and would say this is attuned to like real learning when they're trying to build a fort, when they're collaborating with one another, tinkering, etc. Our kids just don't have enough playtime as adolescents, and then basic unstructured enjoyment of life. So play, however that looks like. Maybe it's cooking, maybe it's baking, whatever it is, to encourage that. The downtime, kids need time to just unwind. We had Ken Ginsberger on our board, and he said these are the essential questions our kids are asking themselves. They need time to think and chill. Who am I? Am I normal? And do I belong? So wherever you can fit in that transition, that after coming home from a busy day of school, they're not rushing off to another extracurricular as possible. Support a healthy sleep hygiene, establish a consistent routine, no media 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. It seems impossible with a high schooler, I know. Wind down with calm activities. And finally, family time. And this is probably the most protective factor of all. In the research, it really requires 25 minutes a day, 5 days a week, weekends count, where the majority of the family is together. It can be a meal. It can be, in our home was a forced family march on Saturdays. Wherever you can fit it in, this is important. So avoid scheduling during dinner time to make sure that you don't have the tutor coming at 6 o'clock and that your kids are home. Preserve time for family traditions and service activities wherever you can. My adult children come back. They know that we used to go walk dogs at Milo. It's a place where the foster dogs are being held, and they ask for that still. So think about ways to build in service and traditions. And again, designate unplugged time together. Make sure that's important. In my home, I'm from San Francisco. If the Niners are playing, my husband says, we get to watch the Niners. You will have exceptions, but try your best to have unplugged time together. Even phones off the table. So interesting research, if your child's phone or your phone is on the table, turned off and upside down, they will share with you almost half of what they would normally share. So remove all devices on your end as well as theirs anytime you are together. So again, protect PDF, playtime, downtime, family time, and make sure that you incorporate these into your child's life every day. We want them to be included in school as well. So as we're working with Carmel High School, thinking about ways to incorporate PDF in the classrooms. So let's think about and just do a quick reflection with respect to PDF. What is something you are currently doing well? Your kids getting to bed on time, you're having family meals together. Do they have enough unplugged time? So really be thinking, and what's an area you possibly want to boost and add more time to? It's not too late, even with a senior. I want to move on to our space framework. Just like we speak about PDF for families, we have our space framework for schools. And these are kind of the key pillars of change, transformational change we see specifically working with schools. And they come in these 5 different buckets: supportive schedule and use of time, pedagogy that engages, authentic and alternative assessment, climate of care, and education for everyone. So the first one has these kind of 5 buckets here. Schedule. This schedule is foundational to climate of care, to lowering stress, and really thinking about how many periods of meeting per day. We do not see a lot of schools having 9 periods per day. That's a lot of movement. It's a lot of transition. We work with schools to increase instructional minutes per block, where the classes are not meeting every single day, but on a rotating block. where kids can really engage in deeper learning. It actually impacts the homework load as well, where they're not assigned homework for each and every night. So lots of implications. Transitions. We have worked with many schools to lengthen the transition period between periods so that, the adolescent brain, it takes about 13 minutes for the adolescent brain to leave bio and go to their locker and maybe do a quick bio break, check in with their kind of friends, social media, whatnot. They get to class and they look so ready in history maybe, and yet their mind is elsewhere. So 13 minutes. So thinking about building time for transitions, it helps the adults at the school as well, and then exams. And I believe here you don't face having exams coming after winter break. They come before winter break. This is good news, right? We want to make sure they have a free winter break, not saddled with worrying about exams when they get back. When we talk to teachers, we ask them, is there a test and project calendar where maybe a 10th grader might get hit by a tsunami with multiple test projects due in one day? That's not fair. So many schools have worked on thinking about how to scaffold those tests and projects so that kids are not, cramming one night for 3 tests. And then finally, looking at homework. And really this idea and this myth that load equals rigor. And we often conflate those two. And there's a perception that if your student is coming home with more homework, it's a more rigorous classroom, it's a more rigorous school. And we want to debunk that myth, that really we can assign 3 calculus problems, not 30, and be a rigorous teacher. So we work a lot around designing assignments, making sure the purpose is articulated. The next one kind of speaks for itself, involving more project-based learning, more hands-on learning, really looking at the drivers of engagement, which falls under pedagogy, relevant projects that connect to self, and then again, this notion of rigor, not load. One that's particularly important for students, given the fact that it's their number one stressor, remember in their student stress report, grades, tests, projects, is this idea of revision and redemption. That there is an idea that, gosh, I bombed this test or part of it, do I have an opportunity to retake it? I mean, the whole point, right, is to master the content. And yet we push our kids for performance. So really thinking about what are some strategies to implement within a school where kids are allowed to take retests. It's not an easy policy across the board to implement. And we know some teachers are already doing that here, but to really think about a policy to apply for revision and redemption. And then looking at grading policies and making sure they're fair. Between teachers, across the board, you take one content area and it might be a different grading scale in a different classroom. So really making sure there's equity across the board in terms of grading policies. Okay, and the next one is climate of care. Again, so important to any community, work-wise, school-wise, is creating connections, thinking about incorporating social emotional learning and adopting an advisory program or a flex time where kids can connect with another adult, they can connect with their peers, they can get extra help in class. Lots of different advantages to thinking about incorporating advisory and learning some positive coping strategies. And finally, education for everyone. That's what we're doing tonight. I'll be with the teachers tomorrow. And so thinking about making sure that everyone is educated on the protective factors, ways to support a balanced child's life, and really knowledge around, let's go to a college. Because you know what, I want to recognize that's the elephant in the room. That a lot of this pressure is really rooted in this kind of race to XYZ school, right? And not all kids are on that path, but many are competing, they feel, for scarcity and spots at these highly selective schools. So this is a whole workshop, but I want to share with you some of the key slides and distill the research for you right now. Much of high school stress is driven by the belief that there are few highly selective colleges and they are impossibly hard to get into. And number 2, success and happiness depend on getting into one of them. Okay? We know in the research that there are many paths to success, and that includes different levels of selectivity. And when I talk about selectivity, it's really based on, a highly selective school might take 5% or less of its applicants, right? Say an Ivy, Stanford, MIT, whereas a less selective school might take a larger proportion of applicants. So that's how we're thinking about selectivity. Now, a non-selective school, let's say a community college pathway, is where basically you have the credentials, the high school credential to go, and you may end at your 2-year and get your AA, or move on to a 4-year college, which, by the way, is an excellent pathway for kids who are not quite sure if they want to go to 4 years. In California, the UCs, I know this for a fact, given my son went through this process, that is the first group, the community college kids, that they look at for transfers to go to a UC as a junior transfer. So let's think about this question. Does a level of selectivity matter for long-term outcomes? Given the stress around college admissions, does it matter where you go? Does it matter for learning? Does it matter for job satisfaction? Does it matter for well-being? And does it matter for income? So here are the answers I'm previewing for you. I just quickly want to speak to each of them. Does it matter for learning? No. You can go to an Ivy League school, a highly selective school, slack off and not learn anything, right? There are kids, this is what happens to some of those kids, right, who go there. You can go to a community college and with all the resources that apply to a 4-year, great pathway. Turns out learning is tied to studying. You gotta study. Learning is tied to studying. So does it matter, the level of selectivity for learning? No. What about job satisfaction? Same, no. Lots of surveys out there looking at kids of various tiers of selectivity. Turns out job satisfaction, not a differing outcome. How about well-being? And then there is, the Gallup-Purdue study looking at over 30,000 students who went to various different schools with several questions around thriving. Do you have personal relationships? Do you have a job? Are you independent, et cetera? No difference in outcomes. And then finally, does it matter for income? Again, let's think about how the students define success. They define it as that high-paying job, which they believe is based on getting into that school. And it depends. It is clear in the research that going to a 2-year community college and stopping versus someone who's gone to a 4-year, they will make more money in the long run going to a 4-year school, okay? I want to kind of point out these economists, Kruger and Dale, who were really interested in looking at selectivity and doesn't matter. Turns out they actually got 15,000 students of similar learning profile, demographics, et cetera, and they matched them. They were looking for bias. So I want you to think about Group A. Group A applied to highly selective schools, Ivies, et cetera, got in and went. Okay, they accepted their bid and they went. Group B, right? They applied to these highly selective schools, got in and didn't go. Okay, went to a less selective school. Maybe mom was sick. Maybe boyfriend wasn't going. Maybe it was too expensive, location, etc. Lots of different reasons, right? And they followed these kids. Group A who got in and went. Group B who got in and didn't go. 5, 10, 15 years. And it was tied to Social Security data, so really good data. And the question is, if the school made the difference, you would expect to see differences. And there were none, except for one caveat. Those kids who were first generation to go to college or from traditionally underserved populations, we did see a little bump in the amount of money they would make going to these highly selective schools. So the question is it the kid or is it the college? Do we have an answer? It's the kid. It's the kid that matters. So just think about all of these things as you are moving towards the college admissions process, or maybe you're a senior parent now, or you're a senior student and you've had some bids and a lesser known school is offering you a heck of a lot of merit money. Maybe this will help you make your decision that way. So the question really bears, what does matter, okay? Engagement. It turns out to achieve these long-term outcomes, it is what you do in college, not where you go, that matters. Do they have the extracurriculars you love? Is it this a location you want? Is it the scene? Do you want the big rah-rah school or the smaller rural school? Thinking about all of those criteria to help you make your decision. And we have a free white paper. It's called a Fit Over Rankings that you can find on the challengesuccess.org website. So again, a full-blown workshop, but I hope I've shared with you and maybe lowered the threshold of your anxiety about the admissions process, knowing these facts about long-term outcomes, that they are not impacted by the level of selectivity of a college. So here's just one more beat here. College is the gateway, not the goal. So find the right fit and don't focus on the name, ranking, etc. Stay away from the U.S. News and World Report. We also ask students, just to kind of close the data portion here, all right, so you shared your stressors. We got a little data about your homework, your academic worry, parent expectations. What would improve the student experience here at Carmel? What would improve it? No homework on weekends, weekends or over breaks. We typically see something around homework in the top 3 for most high school students. A reduced homework load, about half. Change the schedule, over a third. Say, gosh, this is a pretty hectic schedule. You try following your kid for one day, bell to bell, with the start of the morning at 7:04 and 7:09 start. You try marching through that day, which is why we advocate shadow days, where faculty, administration walk with a particular student throughout the day to really, walk in their shoes and get a sense of the busy, hectic schedule. They say, listen, it would be great to have more hands-on active learning, about a third. And then finally, let's coordinate those due dates for major tests and assignments. That sure would lower our stress level. So, strategies. Let's think about the strategies. I want you to think to the start of this talk, right, where we ask you to define success. And I want you to hold on to that, those values, which I can imagine were pretty much intrinsic, right, versus those extrinsic ones our society is stating. Examine subtle messages. Stay away from kind of these questions around performance. Hey, honey, I saw you got a C on that history test. Avoid checking the grade portal. I don't know how many are doing that. I know our students here, based on the survey results, are checking their grades weekly, daily, sometimes more than once a day. They want to make sure they're up to speed with their GPA. So try to avoid as much as possible keeping that family time sacred to checking in with them about their social, emotional well-being. How are you? What are you learning, etc. And stay away from the discussion around grades as much as possible. That goes for sports too, okay? How many goals did you score? How many touchdowns? Really taking the gas pedal off performance. Honor health and well-being. Your own phone use in front of your kids, making sure you incorporate PDF into your life every day. Show them some fun, that you're having fun and joy. In order to do that for them, we got to really avoid the overscheduling in terms of extracurriculars. Do your best to limit media and screen time. Common Sense Media is a website where they actually have contracts. In my home, we did have a contract where my husband and I signed it, my kids signed it, with the rules of docking the phones at 9:30. Kind of present this as a third point. And hey, honey, I heard this research tonight or today around the importance of sleep, and make that a priority. Model engagement and integrity yourself, and then really debunk the college myths. Tell 10 people when you run into them at the marketer and you're like, hey, I heard this information around college admissions, and try to live into your own values as you start navigating that, what can be a very stressful experience for families. So I'm going to close soon, and I want you to think about what's one specific commitment you can make in the next month, maybe even day, to support your child's health and well-being. And let me back up, and I want you to think about PDF again. I want you to think about course selection, screen time, all of those things. I know the school is making commitments and working with my colleague Jeff Lipman to really consider specific policies and actions to really promote balance in the school. And finally, we want to join us and stay engaged. Carmel High School is part of our Challenge Success family of schools. Right now, we've worked with over 250 formally, and you are now in that family. We have a website that's chock full of information, a very active Facebook feed where we are pushing out research on a daily basis, as well on Instagram and LinkedIn as well. So thank you. Thank you to the principal here. Thank you, thank you to everyone who is here in the audience, and for all of you at home who are tuning in. I wish you a wonderful rest of your year. Thanks so much in this discussion.
Now that we have this data from our own students about their experience in school and outside of school, what can we do to help facilitate greater sense of well-being, belonging, and engagement in school? And we have a lot of options that we can look into, and I'm going to explore some of those now. So, some of what we're considering as a school and as a district is looking at our students' school start time. Currently, school starts at 7:09, first period bell rings, and that's one of the earliest start times in the region. And we know that our students are only getting about 6.3 hours of sleep, some less, some a little bit more, and that on average is about 2.7 hours less than they should be getting as a high school student, as an adolescent. So one of the things that we're considering is moving to a later start time. And this is something that Superintendent Fairbairn has discussed in a Board of Education meeting. What we would be considering is looking at possibly pushing back to a 7:49 a.m. start time and pushing back dismissal to 2:30 p.m. This would put us back by about 40 minutes, giving our students about 40 more minutes of sleep per day, which we know could be beneficial to their mental health, lower their stress and anxiety, and overall improve their well-being. This would have a minimal impact on sports and extracurricular activities, and it would put us in line with some of the local high schools in the area. We know that we are the earliest start time in the region, and if you look at some of the schools that are nearby in Putnam County, Brewster High School starts at 7:40 and ends at 2:35. Putnam Valley High School starts at 7:43 and ends at 2:38. And Somers High School starts at 7:35 and ends at around 2:10. So to have us push back our start time will put us in line with those schools and others that we compete with in terms of sports and extracurricular activities. And it would also be a great opportunity for our students to improve their health and well-being. Other considerations that we're looking into. Longer instructional periods. Currently, our instructional periods are about 41 minutes per period, and we have a 9-period day. We have the opportunity through longer instructional periods to give our teachers a chance to dive deeper into the curriculum with the students. It provides more time for project-based learning, which is in line with the New York State Graduation Measures Initiative that was put out by the Blue Ribbon Committee this past fall. Longer instructional periods would allow for less transitions for students, less classes to prepare for on a daily basis, and less homework and assignments to complete each night. We believe that longer instructional periods would allow our students to focus and fully engage in learning each and every day in each class. Another consideration, which we've seen a number of schools in the region move to, is a community lunch. A community lunch is lunch for all students at the same time in the middle of the school day. It's an opportunity for students to connect with friends. No matter what grade you're in, if you're coming in from George Fisher Middle School, you'll know when you come to Carmel High School, you're going to have lunch at the same time as one of your friends, which is really an important for students in terms of their building a connection to the building and further developing the friendships that they enjoy. During community lunch, we've looked at other schools that offer opportunities for students to get some activity during the day. And what we would plan to do is to open the gymnasium and have structured gym time where students could play basketball, volleyball under the supervision of a teacher and other staff members. We would try and open up our weight room to promote the health and wellness of our students and give them a chance to productively burn energy and have fun during the school day. During community lunch, clubs and activities can run, which would increase equity and allow our students who may not want to stay after school, may not be able to stay after school due to other obligations, an ability to join a club that they would enjoy, connect with friends they may not have already met, and really get the most out of their experience at Carmel High School. Community lunch, during community lunch, we'd be able to transform some of our spaces here in the building. If we think about our gym lobby, triangle, courtyard, and the library foyer, creating those as student spaces where students would be able to relax, eat, talk with friends, and enjoy a little bit of downtime in the middle of the day so that they could be refocused and re-energized for the second half of the day. If we do a community lunch, we would maintain our traditional uptown privileges for our students, allowing our 11th and 12th graders who have earned the ability to leave campus to grab a bite to eat uptown. And then it also would allow us to do school-wide events on a monthly basis to help build our community and strengthen the community and culture we have here at Carmel High School. Another consideration is a rotating schedule. We have visited schools over the past 7 years. Carmel High School has looked with a scheduling committee. We have visited a number of schools in the area that do a rotating schedule. And the type of schedule that we would consider in terms of a rotating schedule would be an 8-day cycle. Classes would meet 6 out of every 8 days, and the instructional periods would be longer. Classes that meet every other day currently, such as a lab period, science lab, or a gym class, phys ed class, would meet either 3 out of 8 cycles or 2 out of 8 cycles, depending on the class. There would be a morning rotation and an afternoon rotation with community lunch in the middle of the day for all students. One of the benefits for both students and for staff members is that you don't always start the day or end the day with the same class. It provides a little bit of change and transition for students, and the ability to, if let's say I was a student that didn't love first period algebra every day, I wouldn't have first period algebra every day. If I was a student who had a free period built into their day but was not at the end of the day, it would rotate through, and sometimes that free period might be at the end of the day if I was a senior and I would be able to leave campus early. So it would provide a level of change and excitement for our students and for our staff, and we believe the schools that we've looked at seem to have really enjoyed a rotating schedule, so that is another consideration for us. And finally, looking at a flex period. So a flex period could be involved in a number of different things. But one of the things that we saw in our survey is that our students, when we surveyed our students, 69% of our students stated that they had a trusted adult that they could go to with a personal concern. And as what we saw is by the time they were seniors, that number was 75%. And what we want to do is, through the use of a possible advisory period, give an opportunity for students to build connections with their teachers and staff members, to be able to have a trusted adult in this building, have an opportunity in a place where they can process and talk through concerns and issues, and really kind of strengthen their connection to the school staff and also to Carmel High School. Other things that can be worked into a flex period. Currently, our students miss class for music lessons. If we built in a flex period, we might be able to have music lessons during that flex period. This might be an area where we would be able to extend our science labs so that they would be able to complete their mandated lab minutes. It would be an opportunity for us to introduce additional academic intervention services and possibly office hours, so students would be able to meet with a teacher, counselor, or another adult in the building so that they could get questions answered that would be built in to their school day. So in terms of next steps, we are at this time looking at possible scheduling options for the 26-27 school year. When we develop a schedule that we believe would be appropriate for the 26-27 school year, then we are going to begin to have conversations with different stakeholders, students, parents, community members, teachers, all the people that are impacted by the master schedule of a high school. And those meetings will happen starting in the spring of 2025 and going into the fall and winter of 2025. And then we would begin transition planning for a new schedule for the 26-27 school year. So I'd like again to take this opportunity to thank Challenge Success for their partnership. We really value the partnership that we've been able to create, and working together, we believe that we are going to continue to make Carmel High School the best possible place for our students, and we look forward to continued student success and improving their well-being, their engagement, and their belonging at Carmel High School.